Welcome back to Mark Holubit's vlog, everyone. And what do we have parked right in front of me? Yes, in fact, I found my dream Jaguar F Type. Now, I've been looking for a long time, and a lot of you know that you've been to this channel before because I've talked about the F Type, but I want to talk about some of the features and some of the options that I was specifically looking for. I mean, a lot of people have been asking, honestly, Mark, hey, what is that color? What is that type of option? How did you get those seats? What sort of wheels are those? Well, I'm going to summarize some of the options I literally wanted to find. I didn't want to do without. This car as a whole, in general, the F Type everybody knows, has motivated me from day one. When I first started seeing these cars way back in the day with Jeremy Clarkson on Top Gear, I've always wanted the F Type. But there was a very specific set of criteria that I wanted. Once I started to see these cars show up, I started to see them roll around on the road, I definitely wanted to pick one out. But the reality was, I didn't want to spend 130 grand. Now, I'm not saying don't do that, because when you buy a new car, you always have the choice of whatever options you want. You just got to pick your options, wait 6 months, and you get your car. But the reality is, this car brand new was $130,000. It was a 2018, and I bought it, it was 2 years old. I added some little extra warranty on it, and the sad reality was, I bought this car for just over $70,000. That's literally just over half of its value retained in that 2 short years. So I could not resist and actually pick myself up a used F Type. Now the problem is, yes, these cars do have a significant amount of, depreciation. We all know that. That's not something new. That's not unknown for any of the British vehicles. But the car is such a magnificent piece, I still couldn't resist. I get it. Yes, they're expensive to maintain, and that's a big part of why they depreciate, but I definitely wanted one. And I also had to have a certain criteria, as I said, because I did see them rolling around. And there's some that I'm like, well, oh, I love the way that one looks, but then I see another one, I'm like, well, I like it, but I don't like it with those features or those colors or that type of trim. Now, remember, it's always taster's choice. Everybody's got their own criteria, everybody's got their own thoughts, everybody's got their preferences. Everybody, if everybody wanted the same thing, the car would all be spec'd in one way, but it's not, because the options list is significant. But I want to share with you guys how I came across my dream car. Yes, I stumbled across this. It took me months, and I drove new cars, used cars, of the like, and I basically drilled into finding this car. Now, while there's 1 or 2 options I would have changed, for the most part, this is the specifications I bought because I wanted it. So let's just drive right in. I know a lot of you guys are curious about what I'm dealing with here. Let's go from the top, and honestly, we'll take it from the exterior and then we'll go to the interior and talk some of the features that you can get with this car. And let's just start with the exterior color. Everybody wonders, what color is that? Well, it's Carpathian gray, or Carpathian gray. However you want to call that, that's what it is. It's a beautiful, it's got a metallic in there, it's a gray, and to be honest, as you can see, it absolutely pops in this light. It also looks majestic, if we can say, really, in darker lights. So when you get just the curves, it accentuates the curves, and I think the darker colors does a wonder for a lot of these cars. Now, cars like the white are always great because you get the white, the black accents, and I think they look great. The reds of different variations I looked at. But honestly, for me personally, I wanted something with the darker grays like this, possibly black, where you could actually see the curves and the lines. But the gray gives it even a little bit more of that curvaceous nature. So the Carpathian gray is the exterior color. But let's look at some of the other features and why, in fact, I really wanted this particular model. Well, one thing that you actually have to notice is this car here actually comes featured with the LED headlights. Yes, they have an L shape, and they're obviously very, very gorgeous. It's a beautiful look, and of course, that's why I went with this later generation of the early type of F Type. Obviously, we've got the longer style headlights. I prefer that over the latest generation F Type with the horizontal lights. I definitely like this look better. So I didn't want to go all in with new because of depreciation, but also because of some of the other design themes. Now, I do like this style. There's nothing wrong with the new generations. They're great. They're beautiful. But I just happen to like this style of light. Also like the LEDs, and again, it gives better light and just looks more high-tech as opposed to some of the projectors that you find in some early generations. Another option that I definitely had to have, if you look here, this is beautiful. It's black, right? It's that high gloss, and I wanted that blacked out trim because with that, you also get other blacked out areas. You get the trim accents there. Of course, this is all blacked out. And some of the other models that I'd seen had more of the chrome detail here. Or around the windows, you see the chrome on some of the other models. I had to have that black. I think this black high gloss trim just makes this car pop, especially when you're dealing it contrasting with this gray, the Carpathian gray. It looks sensational. You also have the dark black down here, and it's all glossy, and it just looks spectacular. Now, one thing here I'll be to note, which is interesting that Jaguar didn't do that. We still have the chrome Jag here. We get the little kitty. As you can see, everything's chrome. This should be blacked out, but that's fine. Leave it for now. This as well. We've got chrome, and we've got chrome there. Possibly do a color change and black those out, but basically this is what I got with the time. Another detail that I really had to have, and this honestly comes standard with the F Type, like we look here, the F Type R, which is what we're driving, and that is the red brake calipers. Now, I wanted the red brake calipers because if you upgrade, the red gives you the steel discs, and this is a very drivable configuration because when you wear these brakes down, it might only cost you a couple $1,000s, and that comes, the red means that you've got the steel brakes. If you've got the yellow calipers, which is gorgeous, and truly is the way to go if you want the performance car on the racetrack, you're not putting a lot of miles on, yeah, I like the yellow calipers. And honestly, again, if it's a garage queen or it doesn't see a lot of light of day, definitely go with the carbon ceramic. It's probably got a better value retention. But the reality is, I'll tell you this much. A friend of mine had a Ferrari 458 several years ago. He actually got the pads wore down too far. He actually had to do a full set of discs all the way around on the Ferrari, carbon ceramic, and basically you had a full set of brake change that he had to compete with. What did that equate to? Well, he basically had to pay to the tune of about $40,000. And that's a painful pill to swallow, especially if you're daily driving it, which was the full intention to do with this car. I wanted a daily drivable car because everybody knows the older generations with the rear-wheel drive platform were pretty much a handful. It's like driving a Corvette or a Mustang in the wintertime with P0 tires. Just not going to work. So this car had to have all-wheel drive. So again, that's also why I picked this later generation of F-Type. We're looking at here, the specific is a 2018, and again, it has the all-wheel drive, and it had to have the all-wheel drive. So that's an option that I wanted, and again, the brakes had to be steel because I'm planning to put miles on this car, and I didn't want the massive cost to be incurred. I mean, you might be talking about $15,000, $20,000 brake job when you wear out your carbon ceramics. And naturally, what we have under the hood of this hot rod is that 5-liter V8 engine. Let's pop the hood and take a closer look. A 5-liter V8, which was a massive piece of the criteria. I had to have the 5-liter V8, 550 horsepower, 0 to 60, 3.5 seconds. It's spectacular. The sound, the performance, the acceleration was like almost nothing else out there. It was competitive with the Ferraris, Lamborghinis, Porsches, and the high-end stuff, the turbos, and all the greatest of those brands. It's spectacular performance, and I needed to have that. So if I was going to have an F-Type, I definitely wanted something with that 5-liter V8, which again, that eliminated a lot of the different models. Now, they're all great models, and I've said this before, any F-Type you can get, the 4-cylinder turbo, the 6-cylinder supercharged vehicles, they're great. What can you say? They're spectacular. But I needed for myself, I needed to have the 5-liter V8 just because I wanted that extra thrust. Now you get the 5-liter V8 supercharged and the all-wheel drive. You basically have a recipe for blistering acceleration. Put that in first gear, do a hard pull, wow, nothing short of breathtaking. This car accelerates like a jackrabbit out of a hole. So I needed to have the 5-liter V8. Of course, they all come standard with the automatic, the 8-speed ZF automatic, which is a great transmission. And so the rear-wheel drive was spectacular. It's great if you want to put the car in tail-happy accelerating spins, but you know what? I was looking actually for something that I could daily drive, as I mentioned already, so I had to have the all-wheel drive. Now, another point I have to point out, fortunately, any wheel package that you get with the Jaguar F-Type is going to be great. There's no bad set of wheels on these F-Types, but as well, I really had to have the carbon fiber. I wanted the carbon fiber wheels. Yes, they're a little bit finicky and you got to take extra special care because it's not much to scratch them. But basically, I had to have these wheels. They're beautiful. You have these beautiful carbon fiber blades on there. And of course, this is a satin finish. So there's satin wheel, satin blade wheel, and I just love the looks of these particular wheels. They also have a higher curb impact rating, so even if you do happen to graze a curb, the chances of refurbishing these wheels is a lot higher than it would be with a lot of traditional wheels, standard aluminum type wheels. These are great. Now this car is pretty much outfitted with every safety nanny, and I really did want all the safety features. Yeah, you have the lane assist, you have all those pieces that tells you when you're drifting. It has all the detection, you know, the pedestrian warning, but even and most importantly, you know, the windshield wiper, the sensing, the humidity sensors built in the glass. It does everything. Even if there's cars driving and I'm backing up and there's cars driving to my peripheral as well as coming up on the T, basically this car will warn me and alert me that there's cars behind me, because everybody knows that these vehicles actually have a horrendous blind spot. And if you look back here, this area is absolutely terrible for seeing out of the cabin here, for sure. Oh, look at this guy, that's a cute car. But right here, we have an area that's just very, very difficult to see through. Again, think of it looking through the driver's seat. You get all this blind spot area, and yes, your mirrors are your friends with this car. So that was one element. Of course, it had to have all the safety features. Also, I have this great little key fob. Some friends of mine were so gracious to give me this great little cover. Lovely, I love this thing, and I'm still using that. I do want to point out that I definitely want all the remote features. I mean, this is a $130,000 car. I mean, it's great to have either operating through the app, which this car does, or as well, you know, you can remotely open that. There's a button to actually open this trunk lid, and of course, or you can just basically do it like this, and there you go. Lo and behold, you have the electric rear deck. So of course, I love having these types of options. I wanted the more luxury in this car that I could get, the better, because after all, that's what a Jaguar is about. If I wanted a ripped out, stripped out hot rod car, I probably wouldn't be looking at the F Type. I'd probably go with a Porsche GT3 RS or something like that, but this is a much more usable, friendly, ornery, and honestly, in some people's eyes, a better looking car as well. So that's a feature that I needed to have. And we can do it like that as well and reclose it remotely. So I don't even need to touch that car to do it. Now I will say, some people ask, well, why didn't you buy the SVR? Why didn't you step into that realm? Well, first of all, it's a lot more money. To get into an SVR, you have basically the same engine, although it's slightly tuned up. In this generation, you go from 550 horse up to 575, barely at the seat of the pants. Yes, you get an improved exhaust system, absolutely. And the SVR also, what you do have is this front fender piece is a little bit different. In the SVR, you get more of a vertical vent here, and it juts out a little bit more. As well as you get a rear wing, which I don't particularly like on the F-Types all that much. I do like the natural curvaceous look of these cars, and I think contaminating them with extra hardware, I think, just doesn't quite do it justice, in my opinion. Although I see how people like that, because it does give it that extra hot rod look. But for me, I wanted that natural curve there. The SVR as well, the big yellow brakes. So honestly, I love the F-Type R. I'm not saying the SVR isn't for me. And if it was a lot closer in price, I'd probably seriously look at the SVR, because I'm always the glutton for extra horsepower. Also, the SVR has typically a more dressed up interior, a little better standard option list, and generally the list goes on and on. I suspect because of lower production numbers, the SVR as well is going to have better holding value for the long term. So if you're worried more on value retention, if you want that extra ounce of performance and something a little different, sure, go with the SVR. It's a great option. But for me, the value bang for buck, again, as I mentioned, I was looking at the depreciation factor and I just couldn't resist. The R is the sweet spot. So that's the list of options on the exterior of this car. Other than, I need to show you one thing on the outside here as well. But let's take a look, guys. So I have to mention, I definitely love the darked out look. So when you look at the car like this, I personally think that having that black area up the middle just adds that pizzazz. And for me, I needed to do one of two things. I had two lists of options on my criteria list. Of course, this one being the glass top, which is wonderful. I wanted to have either that or the carbon fiber roof. Now, whatever I could find was the way I would go. But as you open this up, as you look in here, it really illuminates the space nicely. So having that space and that open there, it really allows the air to sort of, or the light to actually just enter this cabin and make it so much nicer to look at. Now, of course, you can close this up, and then it just gets a lot darker and a little bit less inviting, but certainly better for privacy. So there's other benefits with going with the R, of course, and that's a big part of it. So there were some options that came with the R as standard, also just sort of makes it and packages it in such a way that you pretty much need to get the R, and it's just more cost effective if you want some of those features. Some great extras add-ons, for example, would be down there we actually have the aluminum pedals. You also get another very important feature is the active dynamic exhaust system. Of course, it's switchable either here. You can go full noise mode, or of course you can as well activate your exhaust system right here. Activating it here does a simple little thing. It allows the noise to come on at 2000 RPM and above, and activating this actually gives you full noise all the time. So that was a must-have. I mean, all the videos you talk about the snap, crackle, pop of the F-Type, and that just clearly was an option. No, wait a minute. It wasn't an option. It was actually a must-have, was the noise. So the looks, of course, every F-Type has. But the noise, not every F-Type has, and that's something I needed to have, was the active exhaust sounds. The pedals, and there's a lot of other features like. One thing, of course, is these upgraded seats. You get these performance premium leather seats, and of course with this particular car, I love the branding of this. You get this nice aluminum piece insert here. It's a much more modern looking seat, thinner backrest as you can see here. It looks very, very modern and stylish. You have these beautiful embossed headrests there, and again, a must have for me was activating it through the centerpiece here. You can go either heated or cooled, so it's basically what we have is ventilated seats. So it's premium leather, nicely contoured, fits you like a glove. And again, great for the heat for the winter, because in this climate here in Alberta, it looks like the northern Arctic. Basically looks like northern Siberia, and it is for weather. So I needed to have heated seats, but sometimes it actually gets warm. So to have cooled seats was pretty important too. So heated, cooled was great. As well as you get this beautiful aluminum trim. Center trim here as well, aluminum, is also some custom R bits. This leather steering wheel was great. Now I don't have the flat bottom, but that wasn't really a criteria, but I do like the leather steering wheel. Either leather or as well carbon, Alcantara or carbon fiber would all make the grade for me as well. And because I mentioned the cold weather, right here we have the heated steering wheel, which just makes this nicer on the touch in the colder weather. And that's clearly one of the options I needed to have. Now, I'll be honest, I would, for the interior finishing, would have preferred a little carbon fiber. That's a harder piece to find. Of course, sometimes some people upgrade that. That was a much harder thing. And of course, even more so, unless you stepped into an SVR or a highly spec'd R, it would be very difficult. But instead, you've got this aluminum, what they call the V aluminum trim here. Of course, this is a little bit of a different texturing, but it's nicer than your conventional cheap plastic you're finding in a lot of vehicles. So anything with some extra texturing to it, it breaks it up. You have this piano gloss black. I just love the fit and finish of this. And when I stepped into this vehicle, although it doesn't feel the most intense with all the carbon, it did feel solid. It felt like a nice mix of different gradient of materials. So this V aluminum piece here was very nice add-on. Of course, you have the same detail around here and the same detail up here. So you do get that center section that's all covered in that special textured. If you can hear that, that's a great piece. Another very important feature was over here. So what is the functionality of all this? Well, you can program your seats, preset them, of course, for various drivers. Now, my wife's a little shorter. She doesn't drive my car very often, but I also set my preferences. I can set mine as primary, and then what I do is set another one as sort of entry mode. So I hit that, and then the seat reclines, and it actually moves the seat back, so I can open the door to the vehicle, press the button, and the seat slides back. So I have less difficulty in getting into the seat, because the steering wheel, otherwise the flat bottom would help you, but in this case it's harder to slide into the vehicle. So by pressing and activating one of your presets, it slides the seat all the way back, and then of course allows you to slide in. Then when you get in, then you just hit your number one, and it just moves you back up to the steering wheel into your favorite driving position. So it's nice to have those pre-programmed or multi-programmable type seat functions here, which I have, and I love that. That's a great add-on and definitely a must-have if you have multiple people driving this vehicle, like I said. So definitely a great feature. Another piece is the ambient lighting. If I turn that on, you have a couple of great modes that come with this car. You have the dynamic mode right here. You can basically set up your dynamic mode. So that's great. I love that feature. Comes with the R, SVR. That's a great piece to have when the vehicle's running. But we go back, and another piece I like is this ambient lighting. So here, I can access that, and you can change a few different ambient type light styles. I can go red, and of course then what that does is illuminates, harder to see in the daylight like this, but it provides lighting detail in different parts of the cabin to your preferred preferences. Obviously you have, in this case, red. Of course you can go blue, you can go white, and of course you just change that up, and it provides a little extra flavor and personality in the cabin. And not every model had that. As I said, the R, SVR, standard, not so standard in certain other models. And so it was a nice to have. And when I see modern day BMWs with those models, with those types of finishing, I definitely wanted that in my F-Type that costs twice as much as a BMW that has the same type of features. So that was a must-have as well. And so the interior color really came down to two choices. Because I planned to drive this car every day, it basically had to come in black. Number one, better resale, because everybody can live with black. But not everybody wants red or white or all those different alternative colors. I personally love those dynamic, flashy colors. I love the whites, the bones. I love the red interiors, the orange interiors. I love those cars. And if it was just for that Sunday cruiser, I would definitely probably be going with one of those other colors. I'd be going with something a little bit more flashy on the interior, almost like Lambo themes, you know, with two tones, possibly whites and reds. I would go with those types of themes if I was driving it and this was only a Sunday driver. But because this was intended to be a everyday, day-to-day type driver, I had to have a black interior because these seat bolsters take a beating. And after, 30, 40, 50,000 kilometers on a white interior, those bolsters start to look pretty rough. The crinkles, you get the creases, and then you get the dark areas in between. Starts to look bad. But with the black interior, it wears a lot better, wears a lot longer. So you'll get better wear and tear and life out of that interior with black. So because being a daily driver, this is ultimately my choice. Now I'll say a couple great upgrades. If you did have to have certain features, then you're going to have to go in the new one. For me, it wasn't that important. For example, if you want the full infotainment, the upgraded Jaguar infotainment system and screen without these clunky buttons on the side, you're definitely going to have to step into the newer generations. You're going to have to get yourself into the later F-Type Rs and the later F-Types. And one other feature I needed, of course, if you have some of the older F-Types, you'll have the same feature. But if you go too new, then you won't have that feature. And if you're a techie person, then you'd prefer the latest and the greatest. But basically, what we have over here is, if you want the most modern, if you want a car that resembles the latest Audis, the latest, cars that have the digital display, then you're going to need to get into the earlier generation, the later model cars. I want to make sure I had the analog gauges like we're looking at here. I wanted something more old school with more conventional rings, felt like something out of the 80s or 60s. And that was important to me because as we move into this digital age, everything's electrified. Everything's going to be digital, electronic, and electronic displays and digital everything. So I wanted to still retain what was left of the last generation. So the latest and the greatest of the F-Types to me was this generation because it actually had some of those details, but yet it didn't shed some of those great details for the latest. Again, for me, that's why I stuck with this brand, this particular generation, because of the headlights, because of the gauge cluster. The other thing was, I'd suggest also the later generations or the newer ones also have an exhaust tune that's a little bit quiet and a little bit muffled. This one here, because it's that last piece of that 2018, you're going to still get a great exhaust note. You want to hear it? So that's just a quick rundown. My preferences, the options I was looking for, and the ones that were most important to me. And that's why I wound up buying this particular car. I love the colors and the features, the sound, the performance. It had every box checked. So it's spectacular. It's a great car. I love it. And I'm definitely going to keep this. Now moving into this world of everything's electric. In 10 years from now, you'll look back, have this in the garage, and these will be a true gem. So that's my list of options. Again, everybody's going to have different thoughts. Some people want the V6 with the stick. Some people want better economy. Some people want to minimize the budget. Some people like reds. Some people want the white or the silvers. I mean, you name it. Everybody's got their own choices and they're all great, and there's not one that's wrong. This happens to be my preferred choices. These are the criteria that were important to me, and that's why I bought what I bought. And it took me a significant amount of time to buy this, but here we are, and I'm gonna head her off, everyone. I'd love to hear your thought in the section below. What are your favorite options? Do you like the way I spec this car or the way I picked it? I didn't really spec it because I bought it this way, but I looked for this specification. Do you guys like the specifications? And would you do something similar? Or is there something about this car you wouldn't necessarily do? Remember, it's all about living the lifestyle, living the dream. Life's short, so this is why we do what we do. And as well, don't forget to smash that subscribe button if you want to live a similar lifestyle, learn what it's about, and we'll catch you on the flip side. See you later. Bye-bye.